two presenters, my colleague Remigijus Čiegis from Vilnius University. By his background, he is economist, and myself, Linas Kliucininkas, I am from Kaunas University of Technology, and my area of interest is environmental science and environmental engineering technology. We slightly modified the title of our presentation. Now it's better reflects the content. And the second part sounds like balancing environmental and socio-economic development. So the aim of the study was to provide trends of the Baltic Sea region countries to meet obligations of the Paris Agreement. And when discussing what we mean by Baltic Sea region, these are several definitions. It's so-called narrow view, where the only Baltic Rim countries belong to the Baltic Sea area. Then is extended point of view and wide point of view. So we used this so-called extended point of view to the Baltic Sea region, which means that we more or less cover area by the Baltic Sea drainage area. And it means that some countries are completely covered, others are covered partly, like Northwest Russia, like West Belarus and North Germany. So altogether in the region, we are more than 84 million people. According to our estimations, this is the last data. And what are the trends? What are the trends for the future? We made some modeling, some calculations, and you see the number of population in the Baltic region will decrease. This line shows the whole trend till year 2100. So the trend is that population will decrease. And here we see Poland, except one country showing positive development in respect to population dynamics. This is Sweden. Most probably that number of inhabitants in Sweden will increase. This is according to the existing data. And if we look into the GDP dynamics of the region, it's evidently that it will be growing rather substantially. And when analyzing these data with GDP growth, we also put this case of COVID, where we think that for the region as such, it will take 5 years economically, 5 years to recover to the same GDP level. So these are background data for the region. And for our analysis, we used so-called climate change performance index. The index, which is publicly available, and the analysis is made for 57 countries, world countries, which together are responsible for more than 90% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And the organizations which are responsible for providing this index, these are 3 German organizations: German Watch, New Climate Institute, and Climate Action Network. So we based our analysis of existing situation on these indexes. So if we look very briefly how these indexes are calculated, so altogether there are 14 indicators for every country, 14 indicators. We will not look very deeply into each other, but these indicators are grouped in several categories. So one category is greenhouse gas emissions, then it's renewable energy, then it's energy use and climate policy. When weighting these inputs, of course, the major input is from the first category, greenhouse gas emissions. It makes 40%. The other categories make contribution in order of 20%. And according to the list, the Baltic Sea region countries look like this. Number 4 in the whole rating is Sweden. I should mention also that for this year, and the same as for the previous years, 3 first places were not nominated. So Sweden is the first on the list, but it ranked as the 4th position. So 3 first positions are free. They are vacant. No country. So it means that no one country in the world is doing perfectly well in respect to climate change performance. So if we look into other countries, then number 5 is Denmark, then 8 Lithuania, Finland 10, Latvia 15. So these countries which belong to the well-performing in respect to climate change. Then there are 2 countries, position number 23 and 31 is Germany and Estonia. Then position number 40, the group number 3, which is rather weak. And finally, the group which belong 2 countries from the region is Poland and Russian Federation, position number 50 and 52. So this is the picture for the region. And if we look more deeper sign about each indicator, we could find information for each country. And here I show the target for 2030. It means target according to the Paris Agreement. And this is Sweden. Yes, in the category greenhouse emissions, it's perfectly well done. In the category renewable resources, there is still red color gap between plans and obligations. And the third category is energy use. Energy use for Sweden also is target is a little bit confronts with the obligations. Then let's take the last one from the region which is on the list. This is Russian Federation. And we see here also picture. The red part of the column is much bigger in the category greenhouse emissions, and especially the big gap between reality and obligations is in renewable energy. However, it's rather good results in energy use. The data exists for every single country. I will not go deeper for every country. This was more illustration that these analyses exist. And if we try to summarize all these categories which I mentioned, so we will get picture like this. These are first 5 countries which really show high performance in respect to climate change. And you see all of them have 3 categories estimated as high, or at least 2 of them are estimated as high. And another group of countries, which Germany, Estonia, Belarus, Poland, and Russia. Here you see not so much of green color, except few cases. And our conclusion was why these countries are little behind. Some are rather behind the countries, Scandinavian and Baltic countries. We found the reason that these countries belong on fossil fuels. Germany, not so much from locally produced fossil fuels nowadays, but we know Nord Stream, and discussion is about Nord Stream 2, natural gas from Russia. So it means that Germany, one leg is standing still in fossil fuel. However, Germany is well evaluated according to the climate policy. It is really, really high. Estonia. Estonia also partly belongs from the local resources. This is oil shale. And Estonia actively is using oil shale. Belarus. No local resources, but most of their energy, primary energy resources are imported from Russia. So this country is very much dependent on Russian fossil fuels. Poland, locally produced brown coal. And finally, Russia. This is, we know that this is a rich country with the fossil fuels and is selling fossil fuels to different parts of the world. So the conclusion between these two tables is that those countries in front of you belong very much in intensive fossil fuels. And if we try to make predictions for the future, how the countries as a region, we as a region will develop, we were using the methodology of so-called socio-economic pathways. This methodology was elaborated by IPCC, and these are five possible scenarios. Five possible scenarios for development. Scenario number one, it's called sustainability. If the world follows this scenario, so the challenges are really not high. Mitigation and adaptation are not extremely challenging. Number three, regional rivalry. This scenario is oriented towards very regional development, not global, but regional. So regions cooperate and follow this scenario. Scenario number four, inequity. It means that if countries follow this socioeconomic scenario, they increase inequity on the country level and between the neighbors. Scenario number five is fossil fuel oriented scenario. So based on the existing data, we argue that for the Baltic region, scenario number two, which is called middle of the road scenario, will be the right scenario, at least in the near future, in the nearest future, scenario CCP. And we tried to go forward according to this scenario. If the region, countries in the region will develop according to this scenario. So we say that this scenario for the Baltic Sea region countries, however, we should admit that the countries, though they follow the same scenario, they belong to different corners of this square. Let's say Scandinavian countries and Baltic states are somewhere here in the down left corner. Russia and Poland are more in the right high corner, and other countries are in between. So we follow the same scenario, but different pathways. And if the countries will follow the scenario, we have picture like this. Here we have global mean temperature. In Paris was agreed not, let's say, exceed 2 degrees centigrade. So this is the line, 2 degrees centigrade. Here we have year 2020. So if countries will follow scenario 1 or 2, then success is evident. However, if the countries will follow scenario 3 and finally the red line base scenario, the scenario if nothing will change, business as usual, then the situation will be like this. So I should say that probably it's not realistic that all countries will follow the one pathway. Different countries will follow different pathways. And we came to the conclusions that Poland, Northwest Federal District of Russian Federation, and north part of Germany are major contributors to the greenhouse gas emissions in the region. So these are big economies. Even parts of these countries still make very substantial contribution to the climate. And the countries will follow different pathways. I think the most important is conclusion number 3, that it is most likely that Sweden, Denmark, Lithuania, Finland, and Latvia for the coming decade will follow trends scenario and will not exceed obligations of Paris Agreement. And in a long run, they will slightly converge towards scenario 1. This is sustainability scenario. For Germany and Estonia, we do not expect that they will comply with the obligations to the Paris Agreement, at least for the coming decade. These countries require really changes, less national and imported fossil fuels, but more renewable energy. So probably after year 2030, these countries will converge towards scenario 1. And the most critical situation is for Poland and Russian Federation. And we expect that Poland, being the EU member state, will proceed, make transformation much faster. However, with Russia and Belarus, since Belarus is belonging very much from the Russian fossil fuels of Russian energy resources, these processes will be slower, and to meet Paris agreements, these countries require essential changes.